Hello people, I'm the comic book gamer and today I'm going to be telling you why Jonah Hex is so awesome. He's one of my favorite comic book characters of all time and he's just a really cool character. So in order to understand who he is, let's start off with his origin. Jonah Hex was raised by a very abusive father. His father would beat him and his mother day in and day out, and his mother just could not take it anymore. So she married a real estate salesman and they left Jonah there with his father. His father kept on beating him and it was just not good. So eventually his father wanted to go to California to mine for gold. So in order to bypass through Apache territory, he sold his son to Apaches, and so they used him as a slave, and it wasn't very good for Jonah. It was very rough being the only white guy in an Apache camp, so he didn't exactly get equal treatment. So one day when he was, I would say maybe 17, 18, him and his Apache brothers were going on like a raid to prove themselves, to prove that they were going to be adults and that they could handle everything. And while they were doing that, Jonah got betrayed because, again, he was the only white guy, so he was not very well liked. So this one guy betrayed him. Specifically, this one guy just beat the tar out of him and left him there for dead. These men just found Jonah laying there barely alive, and so they took him in. These men turned out to be Southerners, and in turn, Jonah fought for the South during the Civil War, and he was a bit of a legend because he was this guy who was former Apache and is now fighting for the South. That's kind of a big deal because, you don't really hear about that every day. And so during a raid of a Northern camp, all the Southerners got killed except for Jonah. The Northerners noticed who Jonah was. He was, this white guy that was former Apache. Like I was saying, that's a big deal. He was a legend, so they're like, we'll make an example out of him. They tie him to a raft, whip on his face, just beat on it, literally take a whip and just start cracking on his face, and then they send him up the river. Then, fortunately, Jonah ran into a nice family who saved him, and from then on, he got cleaned up and went to the Apache camp to find the man who betrayed him earlier. So Jonah shows up at the Apache camp and wants to shoot the guy who betrayed him, but the Apache chief comes out and says, no, you have to do it the honorable way. You have to do it with tomahawks. That's the way we do it here. You're not just going to go up and shoot him straight in the face. So Jonah agrees to it. They get into a fight with tomahawks, but the other guy had given Jonah a faulty tomahawk. His tomahawk just came apart during the battle. So Jonah takes a knife out of his pocket and stabs him straight in the neck with it. The Apache saw that as dishonorable because that was cheating, even though the other guy had cheated first and he was just retaliating so he wouldn't die. But the Apaches didn't care about that, so they took a tomahawk and burned it onto his face. They took a tomahawk, put it in the fire, and then burned it onto his face, and that's why his face is so messed up. The combination of the whipping on it from the north and the Apaches just burning a tomahawk on his face. The reason they didn't kill him for betraying, because they're saying normally the penalty would be death, it's because Jonah had saved the Apache chief in the past, so this way it was sort of repaying him, but also doing like the North did, making an example out of him, saying, you don't go against our rules, you don't go against us. So they burned a tomahawk onto his face, and every time someone saw him, they would know what happened to him, and that's why his face is all messed up. Now that we have the origin out of the way, let's talk about some of the awesome stuff that Jonah Hex has done, starting off with the fact that he's beaten Batman. Now, what happened was Batman, during Final Crisis, had been shot by Darkseid's Omega Beams, and those did not kill him. They sent him back to the past. And so, he's there in Jonah Hex's time. He's causing trouble because he's stopping all these crime lords. So, they're like, hey, who's the best? Jonah Hex. Let's hire him to take out this Batman guy. Long story short, they hire Jonah Hex. Jonah Hex goes after Batman, shoots him, and he ends up falling into a river. When Batman climbs out of the river, he's back, not in the present day, but in like the 1950s or 60s. I don't quite remember, but I do remember it was still the past in Gotham. It was just really cool. He just took Batman out like it was nothing. It was... Well, Batman did get some batarangs on him, but in the end, Jonah won. He's also taken out Superman and Batman. Now, this was in an alternate universe, but it's still really cool. What happened was Jonah had been, there was a $1 billion contract on Superman and Batman. It was really short, like 2 pages, so we don't really know how Jonah was in the present, but it just was. And so he has kryptonite bullets, shoots Superman in the back, and then him and Batman get in a fight. He's about to snap Batman's neck, but then another guy intervenes and throws a knife into Batman, and he ends up killing Batman. But yeah, he ends up putting a kryptonite bullet in Superman's head, and he was going to snap Batman's neck. So I would say that's pretty cool. Even though it is alternate universe, it's still pretty cool because people always like to bring up Dark Knight Returns, even though that's an alternate universe, so I figured I'd do the same thing for Jonah Hex. He's also taken out Vandal Savage. Now, if you don't know who Vandal Savage is, think of Ra's al Ghul without the Lazarus Pit. He's just immortal, and he's a really suave guy. And if you've seen Young Justice, you probably know who he is because he's a big guy in that. So what happened was Jonah Hex was in Gotham, and he was helping Alan Wayne, yes, a descendant of Bruce Wayne, find his wife, because what happened was a plague had come upon Gotham, so the city had been walled off so that way no one with the plague could come in. Martial law had been declared by the mayor. It was just a big bad thing. And so Catherine Wayne, who was Alan Wayne's wife, had gone to the city walls to help. She was giving people outside the walls food and stuff, and then she fell, and those people were savages, so they pretty much took her. Well, Jonah Hex was hired by Alan Wayne to go and find her. He went outside the gates, and it was a really cool storyline and awesome. And then it turned out Vandal Savage had taken her in. Well, Jonah Hex went to fight Vandal Savage. He shot him a couple times, but Vandal deflected it with his sword, started giving Jonah a speech. So Jonah Hex shot him with a shotgun, and that was that. It was really awesome. It was just because Vandal Savage is a big villain. He's not a small-time guy, and Jonah Hex just took him out in like a matter of seconds. It was awesome. He's also gone full-on Mad Max. Yes, he went post-apocalyptic future. It was really cool, interesting, a little weird, but it was awesome. He went to the post-apocalyptic desert future Mad Max style. He rode motorcycles. He shot people. It was just really cool. He even fought a future Batman there, and that was one of my favorite Jonah Hex fight because they were like completely even. It was an awesome fight. They just, because it's a future Batman, it's not Batman Beyond, because this happened before Batman Beyond was even created, and it was really cool seeing this future post-apocalyptic Batman fight Jonah Hex. It wasn't Bruce Wayne or anything, but it was just an awesome fight, and there's just a big storyline there, and it's so cool seeing Jonah Hex in this Mad Max setting. It was awesome. So if you're a fan of Mad Max, definitely check that out. Now, one of the really cool aspects of Jonah Hex is choice, because if you look at his early life, he did not have a lot of choice. Well, he didn't have any, because he was beaten by his dad at a young age, and he was not able to do anything about it. Then he got sold to the Apaches, and he didn't have any freedom there. He had to do everything they told him. Then he got saved by those Southerners, so he had to fight for the South, because later on we see that he is not pro-slavery. He is anti-slavery. He just fought for the South because he had no choice. So that's why later on he really doesn't give a damn about anything. He does whatever he wants because early on he had no choice whatsoever. So now he has all the freedom in the world, and he can do whatever he wants, and that's why he does just that. He does whatever he wants. He doesn't care what anyone thinks of him, and I just think that's a really cool aspect of the character. Also, I believe that Wolverine was inspired by Jonah Hex. Now, neither of the creators came out and said, hey, he was an inspiration for Wolverine, but if you read both characters, they are very similar in like their traits and everything. They're pretty similar characters. Not a straight up ripoff, but I do believe that Jonah Hex was an inspiration for the creation of Wolverine. That's just my personal theory, and I think that makes Jonah Hex that much more cool. Now, here are some Jonah Hex books I'd highly recommend if you're interested in reading Jonah Hex. All 6 volumes of New 52 All-Star Western. They're all fantastic. Jonah Hex No Way Back, Jonah Hex The Six Gun War, Jonah Hex Bury Me in Hell, and Jonah Hex Tall Tales. There are a bunch of others, but those are just some of my personal favorites, and they're great. And the majority of them are written by the same writers, Jimmy Palmiotti and Justin Gray, so a lot of it's connected. They sort of did what Jeff Johns did with Green Lantern, how Jeff Johns was on Green Lantern for like 10 years, so were these guys. These guys were on Jonah Hex for a while, so pretty much everything's connected. Also, another cool thing about Jonah Hex is he pretty much kills all of his villains. There's like one villain that stays alive throughout all of it, and I just thought that was really interesting because generally it's like, okay, this villain's done so many bad things, but for some reason they're not getting the death penalty or anything, or they're just constantly breaking out of prison, just nothing's happening. But Jonah Hex kills most of his villains, and I just thought that was pretty cool to change it up from what you normally see. But yeah, that is why I believe that Jonah Hex is awesome. I have some future episodes planned for this series. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like.